Wonder of the Wasteland, Chapter 12, Part 1. The second meeting between Adam and the prospector Desmukes occurred at Tikopah, a mining camp in the Mojave Desert. Excuse me. The mining camp lay in a picturesque valley where green and gray growths marked the course of the gravel-lined creek, and sandy benches spread out to dark rocky slopes like lava that heaved away in the Black Ranges. It was in March, the most colorful season in the Mojave, that Adam arrived at Tikopah to halt on a grassy bench at the outskirts of the camp. A little spring welled up here and trickled down to the creek. Excuse me again. It was drinking water celebrated among desert men who had been known to go out of their way to drink there. The telltale ears of Adam's burrow advised him of the approach of someone, and he looked up from his camp task to find a familiar figure approaching him. He rubbed his eyes. Was that strange figure the same as the one so vividly limned on his memory? Squat, huge, grotesque, the man coming toward him was Desmukes. His motley patched garb, old slouched hat, his boots yellow and with clay and alkali, appeared to be the same he'd worn on the memorable day Adam's eyes had unclosed to see them. Desmukes drove his burros up to the edge of the bench, evidently having in mind the campsite Adam occupied. When he espied Adam, he hesitated, and gruffly calling to the burros, he turned away. "Hello, Desmukes," called Adam. "Come on, plenty of room to camp here." The prospector halted stolidly and slowly turned back. "You know me?" he asked gruffly as he came up. "Yes, I know you, Desmukes," replied Adam, offering his hand. "You got the best of me," said Desmukes, shaking hands. He didn't seem a day older, but perhaps there might have been a little more gray in that scant beard. His great ox eyes, rolling and dark, bent a strange, curious glance over Adam's lofty figure. "Look close, see if you can marvelous a man you befriended once," returned Adam. The moment was fraught with keen pain and a melancholy assurance of the changes time had made. Strong emotions of gladness, too, were stirring deep in him. This was the man who had saved him and who'd put into his mind the inspiration and passion to conquer the desert. Desmukes was perplexed and a little ashamed. His piercing gaze was that of one who'd befriended many men and could not remember. "Stranger, I give it up. I don't know you." "Wansfell," said Adam, his voice full. Desmukes stared. His expression changed, but it was not with recognition. Wansfell, he ejaculated. "I know that name, hell yes. I've heard of you all over the Mojave. I'm sure glad to meet you, but I never met you before." The poignancy of that meeting for Adam reached a climax in the absolute failure of Desmukes to recognize him. Last and certain proof of change. The desert years had transformed Adam Larry, the youth, into the man Wansfell. For the first moment in all that time did Adam feel an absolute sense of safety. He'd never be recognized, never be apprehended for his crime. He seemed born again. "Desmukes, how near are you to getting all your 500,000? queried Adam with a smile. There seemed to be a sad pleasure in this baffling old prospector. "By God, how'd you know that?" exclaimed Desmukes. "You told me." "Say, Wansfeld, am I drunk or are you a mind reader?" demanded the prospector, bewildered. Coming along here, I was thinking about that 500,000, but I never told anyone except the boy once, and he's dead. How about your white-faced burro Jenny, the one that used to steal things out of your pack? Asked Adam slowly. Jenny, ejaculated Dismukes. With a start, his great ox eyes dilated and something of a shock ran through his huge frame. That burro I never forgot. I gave her away to a boy who starved on the desert. She came back to me, tracked me to Yuma. And you, how'd you know, Jenny, man? Who are you? Dismukes, I was that boy you saved down under the chocolates, 90 miles from Yuma. Remember, it was Jenny. Saw me wandering in a circle, mad with thirst. You saved me. You gave me Jenny and a pack, told me how to learn the desert, sent me to the Indians. Dismukes, I was a boy. I am now Wansfell. The prospector seemed to expand with the increased strain of his gaze into Adam's eyes until the instant of recognition. By God, I know you now, he boomed, and locked his horny hands on Adam in a gladness that was beyond the moment and had to do, perhaps, with a far past fate than things. I thought you died on the desert. Jenny's coming back. Seen proof of that, but you lived. You, that boy, tall as a mescal plant with eyes of agony. I never forgot, and now you're Wansfell. Yes, my friend, life is strange on the desert, replied Adam. And now, unpack your burros, make a camp with me here. We'll eat and talk together. A sunset rear on the Mojave glowed over the simple camp tasks of these men who, in their wanderings, had met again. Clouds hung along the mountaintops, colored into deeper glory as the sun sank. The dark purples had an edge of silver, and the fleecy whites turned to pink and rose, with golden rays that shot from behind the red-hazed peaks. Over the valley fell a beautiful and transparent light, blending and deepening until a shadow as blue as the sea lay on Tecopa. While the men ate their frugal repast, they talked, each gradually growing used to a situation that broke the desert habit of silence. There was an unconscious deference of each man toward the other. Wansfell seeing in Dismukes the savior of his life and a teacher who had inspired him to scale the heights of human toil and strife, and Dismukes finding in Wansfell a development of his idea, the divine spirit of man rising above the great primal beasts of the desert, self-preservation and ferocity. Wansfell, you kept track of time? Asked Dismukes reflectively as he got out a black stumpy pipe that Adam remembered. No, days and weeks glide into years. That's all I can keep track of, replied Adam. I never could either. What is time on the desert? Nothing. Well, it flies, that's sure, and it must be years since I met you first down there in the Colorado. Let's see, 3 times I went to Yuma, once to Riverside, and twice to the San Diego. 6 trips. That's all I've made to bank my money since I met you 6 years ago, but say I missed a year or so. Dismukes, I've seen the snows white on the peaks 8 times. 8 years, my friend, since Jenny cocked her ears that day and saved me. How little a thing life is in the desert. 8 years, echoed Dismukes and wagged his huge, shaggy head. It can't be. Well, time slips away. Wansfell, you're a young man, though I see gray over your temples, and you can't have any more fear because of that. That crime you confessed to me, Lord, man, no one would ever know you as that boy. No fear that way anymore, but fear of myself. No fear that way anymore, but fear of myself, Dismukes. If I went back to the haunts of men, I'd forget. Ah, yes, sighed Dismukes. I understand. I wonder how it'll be with me when my hour comes to leave the desert. I wonder, will that be long? You can never tell. I might strike it rich tomorrow. Always a dream I'm going to. It's the dream that keeps a prospector nailed to the lonely wastes. Indeed, this strange man was a dreamer of dreams. Adam understood him now, all except that obsession for just so much gold. It seemed the only flaw in a great character, but the fidelity to that purpose was great as it was inexplicable. Dismukes, you had a third of your stake when we met years ago. How much now? More than half once fell, safe in the bank and some hid away. Came the answer, rolling and strong. What understanding of endless effort abided in that voice. 250,000, my friend. It's enough. Take it and go. Fulfill your cherished dream, said Adam. Go before it's too late. I've thought of that many times when I was sick and worn out with a damned heart and loneliness. I've tempted myself with what you said, but no, I'll never do that. It's the same to me now as if I had no money at all. Take care, Dismukes, warned Adam. It's the gaining of gold, not what it brings, that drives you. Quien sabe, as the Mexicans say. Once, Phil, have you learned the curse, or it may be the blessing of the desert that makes us wanderers of the wastelands? No, I have not. Sometimes I feel it's close to me, like the feeling of a spirit out there on the lonely desert at night. But it's a great thing, Dismukes, and it's linked to the very beginnings of us. Someday I'll know. Dismukes smoked in silence, thoughtful and sad. The man's forceful assurance and doggedness seemed the same, and yet Adam sensed a subtle difference in him. It was beyond a power to define. The last gold faded from the bold domes of the mountains. The clouds turned gray. The twilight came on as a stealthy host. And from across the creek came discordant sounds of Tecopa, awaking to the revelry of a gold diggings by night. How'd you happen along here? Queried Dismukes presently. Tecopa was just a watering hole for me, replied Adam. Me too, and I'm sure saying that I like to fill my canteens here. Last year I camped here, and when I went on, I kept one of my canteens so long that the water spoiled. Found some gold trace up in Kingston Range, but my supplies ran out, and I had to give up. My plan now is to go in there and then on to the Funeral Mountains. They're full of mineral, but a dry, hard, poison country for a prospector. You know that country? I've been on this side of the range. Bad enough, but the other side of the funerals is Death Valley. That gash in the summer is a blasting, roaring hell. I've crossed it every month in the year. None but madmen ever tackled Death Valley in July in the middle of the day. I've seen the mercury go to 140 degrees. I've seen it 125 at midnight. And friend, when them furnace winds blow down the valley at night, sleep or rest is impossible. You just gasp for life. But strange to say, one's fell. Fascination of the desert is stronger in Death Valley than at any other place. Yes, I can appreciate that, replied Adam thoughtfully. It must be the sublimity of death and desolation, the terrible loneliness and awfulness of the naked earth. I'm going there. So I reckon. And see here, Phil, I'll get out my pencil and draw you a little map of the valley, showing my trails and water holes. I know that country better than any other white man. It's a mineral country. The lower slope of the funerals is all clay, borax, soda, alkali, salt, niter. And when the weather's hot and that stuff blows on the hot winds, my God, it's a horror. But you'll want to go through it all and you'll go back again. Where do you advise me to go? In. Well, I'd follow the Amargosa. It's a bad water, but the better than none. Go across and up into the Panamints and come back across again by Furnace Creek. I'll make you a little map. There's more bad water than good, and some of it's arsenic. I found the skeletons of 6 men near an arsenic water hole. I reckon they'd come on this water when bad off for thirst and didn't know enough to test it. And they drank their fill and died in their tracks. They had gold too, but I never could find out anything about these men. No one ever heard of them. I was the only man who knew of the tragedy. Well, it's common enough for me, though I never before run across so many dead men. Once, Phil, I reckon you found that common too in your wanderings. Dried up mummies, yellow as leather or bleached bones and a grinning skull, white in the sun. Yes, I buried the remains of more than one poor devil, replied Adam. Is it best to bury them? I let them lay as a warning to other folks. Poor devils. No one but a crazy man would drink at a water hole where there was a skeleton. Well, to come back to your going to Death Valley, I'd go in by the Amargosa. It's a winding stream and long but safe, and there's firewood and a little grass. Now, when you get across the valley, you'll run into prospectors and miners and wanderers at the water holes, and like as not, you'll meet some of the claim jumpers and robbers that live in the Panamints. From what I hear about you, Wansfeld, I reckon a meeting with them would be a bad hour for them and something of a good fortune to honest miners. Hey, Dismukes, I don't run from men of that stripe, replied Adam grimly. I reckon not, said Dismukes, just as grimly. Well, at last time I was over there, let's see, it was in September, hotter than hell, and I run across 2 queer people up in a canyon I'd never prospected before. Didn't see any sign of any other prospectors ever being in there. 2 queer people, a man and a woman, living in a shack they'd built right under the damnedest, roughest slope of weathered rock you ever saw in your life. Why, it was a plain case of suicide, and so I tried to show them. Every hour you could hear the crack of a rolling boulder or the grady slip of an avalanche, getting uneasy and wanting to slide. But the woman was deathly afraid of her husband, and he was a skunk, and a wolf rolled into a man if I ever saw one. I couldn't do nothing for the poor woman, and I couldn't learn any more than I'm telling you. That's not much, but once, Phil, she wasn't a common sort. She'd been beautiful once. She had the saddest face I ever seen. I got 2 feelings, one that she wasn't long for this earth, and the other that the man hated her with a terrible hate. I met with queer people in queer situations as I wandered over this desert. But here's the beat of all my experience. And once, Phil, I'd like to have you go see that couple. I reckon they'll be there, if alive yet. He chose a hidden spot, and he has Shoshone Indians pack his supplies in from the ranches way on the other side of the Panama. It's a queer deal. Horrible for that old poor woman, and I've been haunted by her face ever since. I'd like you to go there. I'll go, but why do you say that, Dismukes? Asked Adam. Well, you ought to know what your name means to desert men, replied Dismukes constrainedly, and he looked down at the campfire to push forward a piece of half-burnt wood. No, I never heard, said Adam. I've lived most always alone. Of course, I've had to go to freighting posts and camps. I've worked in gold diggings. I've guided wagon trains across the Mojave. Naturally, I've been among men, but I never heard that my name meant anything. Wansfell, I remember now that you called yourself Wansfell. I've heard that name. Some of your doings, Wansfell, have made campfire stories. See here, Wansfell, you won't take offense at me. No offense, friend. Dismukes, replied Adam, strangely affected. Here was news that forced him to think of himself as a man somehow related to a responsible to his kind. He'd gone to and fro over the trails of the desert, and many adventures had befallen him. He had lived them with the force the desert seemed to have taught him, and then had gone his way down the lonely trails, absorbed in his secret. The years seemed less than the blowing of sand. He'd been an unfortunate boy, burdened with a crime. He was now a matured man, still young in years, but old with the silence and loneliness and strife of the desert, gray at the temples with that old burden still haunting him. How good to learn that strange men spoke his name with wonder and respect. He had helped wanderers as Dismukes had helped him. He had meted out desert violence to evil men who crossed his trail. He'd doubtless done many little unremembered deeds of kindness in a barren world where little deeds might be truly overappreciated. But the name Wansfeld meant nothing to him. The reputation hinted by Dismukes amazed him, strangely thrilled him. The implication of nobility filled him with sadness and remorse. What had he done with the talents given him? End of chapter 12, part 1.